G'day guys and gal. There are a lot of intense rivalries, both in fiction and in our own real life. Tom and Jerry, Ronaldo and Messi, Israel and literally everyone, but none quite match the intense brotherly rival of Rogal Dorn and Perturabo. What makes their intense disdain for each other so compelling is that they are two sides of the same coin, with the sad irony being if they actually worked together or fought side by side, they would literally be unstoppable. I genuinely believe that if Dorn and Perturabo had 10 years to build a fortress together and protect it against the other 16 legions, they would win. Alas, they are destined to forever be foes, which does beg the question, which of them would actually win in a head-to-head? Which of them is truly the better warrior, siege attacker or siege defender? Before we get started, Friday slap. Not only because you can drink shitloads guilt-free, but because we have the latest and greatest major mini launch, as we are not only bringing back Peturabo and the Praetorian, but we're also releasing a limited edition diorama base connector, so you can give them the legendary face-off they deserve. Now I know there may be some confusion. Some of you already have Peter, some of you already have the Praetorian, some have both, some have neither. But don't worry, I've thought of everything. You can get the diorama piece by itself, so if you already have Peter, you can pick that up and the Praetorian up separately. Likewise, you may have noticed the Praetorian has a different base for the diorama. That is the limited edition version of the model which is launching today. Peter and the Praetorian are returning permanently to the range. However, the diorama version and the limited edition Praetorian will not be permanent, so this is your only chance to get him. You can't tell me you don't want this face-off. It's not the usual kind of major mini release and it has been a nightmare to produce due to the diorama size, but it looks fucking awesome. So please validate the amount of pain we've endured to make this a reality. Link is below. Today we'll go over the rivalry of Dorn and Perturabo and use the in-law evidence to show us who would actually win in a fair fight. Let's get into it. Dorn and Perty's rivalry started very early on, with it being the result of stubbornness, egos, and the Emperor being a bit of a shitty dad. Stubbornness is what made Dorn and Perturabo such good siege masters, but it's also what made them loathe each other. Likewise, the Emperor encouraged conflict and rivalry within his primarchs so that they would always try outdo each other, thus achieve greater things and become greater versions of themselves, in theory. Perturabo had this insecure but superior personality complex. He had this fragile ego where he thought he was better than everyone else, and the idea of being outdone or beaten would make him crash out really hard. He also was too proud to ask for help or express when he wasn't really vibing something. For example, Perturabo would be thrown at the most grueling sieges during the Great Crusade, because he was good at it and he never complained about it. The Emperor didn't inherently like giving out praise. He saw it as something he had to do to appease certain sons and stroke their egos. Some primarchs thrived off of praise and regularly sought it, like Fulgrim, whereas others didn't give a shit and did their duty, like the Lion. Perturabo wanted praise but he didn't seek it out, so the Emperor grouped him into the category of low-maintenance primarchs. Likewise, Perturabo internally expressed his desire to build and create works of art, but everything amazing he made he kept in a private workshop, didn't tell anyone about, and literally made his legion as unaesthetic as possible. They had gunmetal armor, no ornamentation, hazard stripes. I mean, his fucking flagship didn't have any windows on it because he saw them as pointless, despite looking into the deepness of space being a stunning sight to see. You combine all this together, it's no wonder Perturabo wasn't chosen as a builder or constantly praised for his efforts. Rogal, on the other hand, was regal, liked aesthetics, expressed his joy of building, was open to his brothers, and embraced the role of an older brother to many of them. This is why the Emperor would bestow upon him many honors and name him the Praetorian of Terror, because he knew that's what Dorn wanted. And from everything he'd seen, Dorn was the man for the job. Sure, Perturabo could have made something even more grand and beautiful, but based off his track record, everyone probably thought it was going to be a slab of concrete covered in a gazillion tons of barbed wire. So you end up with Perturabo harboring this deep resentment of Dorn, someone who we saw as getting all the praise despite Perturabo believing himself to be superior, and you get Dorn looking down on Perturabo for being this bitter little bitch who fought very ugly wars and didn't seem to care about his sons. However, Dorn also didn't really care about Perturabo. It was literally that meme of, I feel bad for you, and I don't think about you at all. Basically, Perturabo was in a constant state of suppressed crash out and didn't talk to anyone about it, which is why he snapped and turned traitor after only some minor manipulation from Horus. So now we understand the beef. Who would actually win? Let's start with a straight up fair duel. Both primarchs are underrated duelists, ranking way higher in the primarch tier list than people realize. It's because they spend so much time in a command center rather than in the thick of the fighting like Angron, Jagadai or Sanguinius, so they may come across as less combative primarchs, but that is an illusion. Both have very impressive feats in the lore. Dorn fought and killed Alpharius in a duel, and it was actually pretty one-sided to be honest. A lot of people say that Dorn only won because one of his marines helped block a strike from Alpharius, but if you actually read the book, it's made clear that the attempted block did nothing and just sent the Imperial Fist flying, whilst Dorn deliberately opened his guard to bait the attack so he could trap Alpharius' spear and kill him, which he did. Dorn would then go on to fight Demon Fulgrim, albeit in his human form, in a duel during the Siege of Terror. Dorn fucked up Fulgrim bad, wore him down, and actually landed a blow that if it was normal Fulgrim, it would have killed him. Fulgrim fled after this as he was sick of the fight, and Dorn was very frustrating and painful to fight against. In both cases, Dorn came out on top with minimal injury to himself. Sure, Fulgrim didn't fight in his demon form and didn't take it super seriously, however his speed, strength and cum load would have been significantly higher than normal as he was still a demon. Compare that to Guilliman, who got kinda slain by Fulgrim, and there is a stark difference. On Perturabo's end, one of his most impressive feats was taking on Angron in a head-to-head and beating him into submission. However, there are a few important things to consider here. Firstly, Angron was only freshly a demon, he was not at his full realized power. Secondly, Perturabo knew that if he whittled down Angron and the World Eaters using dishonorable combat, it would weaken them. He basically ordered his warriors to hold big shields while the World Eaters were torn apart by artillery, denying them the glory of blood and melee. Likewise, he blasted the fuck out of Angron and then just fought defensively while Angron's strength was sapped by the blood haze of the battle fading. Basically, he let Angron burn himself out and then bashed him up. Perturabo did tank some impressive hits, even by Primarch standards, but all he needed to do was maintain composure as Angron shrank. It also helps that before they clashed, Angron was hit with enough firepower to atomize a Titan. Basically, Perturabo outplayed Angron, but it wasn't a fair fight in the slightest. Now we do need to remember that Perturabo is now a demon, not a mortal. His size, strength and power significantly grown, not to mention some warp spaghetti he has probably unlocked. For some Primarchs, becoming a demon is like a side grade. Sure, Angron became bigger and stronger, but he also became a raging beast with no tactical acumen or thought. Sure, Mortarion became more durable, but also gained a lot of weaknesses and is vulnerable to Grey Knights and anti-psychic devices. However, for Perturabo, who is already turning himself into a walking weapons platform, I'm struggling to see the downsides for him. Like sure, he's probably more bitter and overly confident and toxic, but the dude is now gigantic. We haven't seen much of him in the lore since he became a demon, however we know he fought against Mortarion. That fight was described as initially in Perturabo's favour, with his firepower and tactics overwhelming the Death Guard. However, Mortarion's plagues and attrition took its toll and the Iron Warriors had to retreat. The Primarchs themselves duelled for many hours and they seem pretty equally matched. So what if Dorn and Perturabo fought in a duel? First round, let's say Perturabo is in his mortal form with Forgebreaker, Dorn with his sword and shield, same loadout he had against Fulgrim. Dorn is not one to be easily baited and is very analytical about how he fights. Likewise, this is a fair fight, not a fight where Perturabo can orbitally strike Dorn for 5 minutes before engaging. Perturabo has numerous high-powered weapons on his person, such as wrist-mounted bolters and melter guns. He would open up with that, which Dorn would block with his shield as he closed the gap between the two. By the time they clashed, the shield would be mostly broken and a single strike from Forgebreaker would shatter it. Then it would be blade against hammer. I genuinely believe Dorn to be more skilled, however Perturabo was better armored and would be stronger. Perturabo was also incredibly fast for his size and bulk. It would be an elite fight, very analytical, lots of counters, two brothers sizing each other up, logic. However, whilst Perturabo is a hot machine of cold logic, Dorn does have his flair and passion that would disrupt Perturabo's cold battle algorithms. I'll have to give this one to Dorn high difficulty. We've seen him beat multiple other Primarchs, we've only seen Perturabo beat Angron with prep time and 1 million rockets backing him up. How about Rogal vs Demon Perturabo? This is where it gets more interesting. Mortal Primarchs can and have beaten Demon Primarchs, more often than not to be honest. Sanguinius beat Angron, Dorn beat Fulgrim, the Lion beat Angron, Jagged-Eye beat Mortarion, Corvus beat Demon Lorgar. However, we have also seen the reverse happen. Fulgrim beat Guilliman, Mortarion beat Guilliman, Magnus was beating Guilliman. Yeah, look, Guilliman isn't the best fighter. Rogal is definitely a better duelist than Guilliman, and the unknown comes from the fact that we haven't seen Demon Perturabo fight yet. We don't know how hard he spec'd into dueling versus being a walking siege engine. It's also made very clear from the Lion's fight with Angron that he only won because he had the Emperor's shield, with Guilliman only being able to last a little while against his demonic brothers because of the Emperor's sword. If Dorn doesn't have an Emperor artifact, such as the Claw, or a new power, like the Lion's Forest Walk ability, I just don't see him winning it. Even if he landed blow after blow, Perturabo would just regenerate, and considering Forgebreaker is now the size of a tank, one strike and Dorn would be pretty fucked. 30k Dorn vs 40k Purdy takes it. If Dorn comes back, we'll just have to see what new gear and powers he returns with before we can make a determination on the outcome of 40k Dorn vs 40k Perturabo. But how about their tactical brilliance and siege mastery? In a straight up Legion war, who wins? Well, this one can be a bit more clear. During the Siege of Terra, Perturabo was wearing Dorn down and winning the siege. All signs indicated towards it. However, after Perturabo had done enough damage to allow demons to manifest, Horus removed him from command, something that pissed off Perty and made him exit the siege. Perturabo also did win the battle for the Iron Cage, a siege war in which the Imperial Fists assaulted an Iron Warriors fortress and lost most of their legion. However, things we have to consider include the fact that the Siege of Terror was 5 full traitor legions with elements from 3 more, not to mention the Mechanicum, infinite ammo and supplies, and a fuckton of demons, versus 3 loyalist legions, 2 of which were battered, and also had dwindling supplies. Yes, defenders have the advantage in any siege, but those odds were very bad. Yet time after time, Dorn held and thwarted Perturabo. Very rarely did Dorn get actually outplayed and cause the loyalist mass casualties. It was much more like all of Rogal's plans worked and caused huge issues for the traders. However, the traders just had too much meat for the grinder to handle. And any time Dorn was outplayed, it was because of bullshit chaos hacks, not the brilliance of Perturabo. Perturabo was literally plugged into a command module for almost the entire siege, working nearly every hour of every day and making constant micro adjustments. Dorn, on the other hand, was walking around, giving commands, speaking with his people. As for the Iron Cage, that was a broken Dorn who was not using his head and probably desired punishment for his failure to save the Emperor. We also just don't know how bad the Imperial Fist lost during the Iron Cage. All we know is that most of them died and the Iron Warriors fled when Guilliman arrived. It could have equally just been as devastating for the Iron Warriors, losing a near equal amount of troops. Maybe the Iron Warriors lost more but just had more to begin with. Until the Scouring book comes out detailing what happened, we don't really know. So who is actually the greater? Now, one answer, which isn't necessarily wrong, is that Dorn is the greater defender and Perturabo is the greater attacker. However, I honestly think it is more or less equal. Perturabo fights with cold, pure logic and efficiency. Dorn fights with stubbornness combined with passion and moments of creative genius. Both can beat the other just as much as they can be beaten. Their rivalry was never about highlighting who was actually superior, it was about highlighting what an absolute tragedy it was that we never got to see them truly work together. I, for one, am incredibly keen to see them face off when Dorn inevitably returns. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up the Peter and the Praetorian diorama, or any of its parts. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.